Johan, say something fresh.
Something fresh.
Something fresh.
Old but gold.
Salad? No. Okay, forget it. This week we're going to talk about FreshDesk. That was my segue.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. FreshDesk is a ticket handling system. It looks like this. And you have tickets and stuff. You have statuses, you have priorities, and you have all kinds of stuff. You have a service, contacts, bots, analytics. And it seems it's starting to be quite popular. And they have a REST API, which makes it easy for us to do cool stuff in it. And I happen to hear from a customer that wishes to incorporate FreshDesk into Zervicepoint. So that was what I was going to do today, I think. So I have already started on a plugin just for fun that we can use to do some cool stuff in FreshDesk. If we dive straight into it, just dive in there. Yeah, so well, here's some start code that I've
Get in there.
I'm getting in there, diving in head first like a madman. Okay, well, let's start in the correct end, actually. So this is FreshDesk. If you want to try it, you go to their page, freshdesk.com/sign up, and you sign up with your stuff here, and you get a free FreshDesk instance, cloud instance, for 21 days, I believe. And once you've done that, and you will want to start to use their API immediately, you just log in and you go to your profile up in the upper right corner, click profile settings, and on the right side here you have an API key, and you just copy that key, and that's all you need to authenticate with the API. You don't need any client IDs or stuff like that. Well, you need the name of the URI for your instance as well. In my case, it's infohelp.freshdesk.com. So after that, if I want to get all the agents, I can show you their very good API documentation page as well. Here we have some information on rate limits, so you will be able to make 100 calls per minute if you have this, the Blossom plan. I have no clue which plan I have. Probably Forest for 21 days, I don't know. But you need to be a little bit smart about how you do your calls. So, because there's some cases where you can embed stuff in your calls to minimize the number of calls. And they have some policies, change log. But if I just want to get all the agents, I can click on agent here. And we have some information here. We can go and list all agents. And here we have the URI, the last part of it. And we have information about, well, we can filter the agents here. So there's some filter syntax here. There's some example on, we can filter on the email address, mobile and phone. And here's some sample code, and these kinds of APIs love to use curl. So if you have curl, you can do that, but I'm going to do it immediately in PowerShell. And this is an example, and X is the method, and in this case it's the REST method get. And here's the username and password authentication. and the username is left of this comma and the password is right. And I read in the documentation that they don't care about the second part here, and the first part is actually your API key that I previously showed you, and then it's the URI, and this is the kind of response you would get back. So if we want to do this in PowerShell, which I've already done, we can look on get all agents here. We have the URI, and this part of the code is basically just to create this base64 encoded pair that we want to put in a header. And so we create a header, it's a hash with authorization. If we just run all of this and we look on the header, it's a hash, as I said, with an authorization key with the value of basic white space followed by the base64 encoded API key. And then I just make sure we use TLS 1.2 because that's required now. And then we just used good old invoke REST method with method get, send in the URI from here, and we provide our header. And according to the documentation, we need to specify the content type. So if I just run this, I get all my agents. It's hard to see where they start and stop. Yeah, okay, so they start at available here. And we have the contact information here. So this is my default user, Erik. And then we have some kind of other default user, customer service, and then an additional one that I created, Bosse. So already there we have our first working API call. Since this is a plugin and I wanted to create more of a real plugin with web service drop-down activities and stuff like that, I went into our plugin folder where I created the League of Legends plugin from the previous videos and the PAP API plugin. I've started working on the Google one here as well. But if you look on the folder structure here, this follows the folder structures of our official plugins. So what do we have? We have a shared modules folder, perhaps the most important in this case, because most of you know about activities and the data sources folders. But the share modules are modules that will be used, or commandlets that will be used both in the activities and the data sources. So that's why they're called shared. Because in our activities, let's say we have an activity to create a FreshDesk ticket, and then you need to have someone as the requester of the ticket, like an agent, or you want to assign it to an agent. And then in that activity, you want to validate that the assignee is a real agent. So you want to use the API to get this assignee. And so then you want to have a code to get an agent. So I extracted that and put in my shared module. And the same goes to data sources, because I have a drop-down. I've created a drop-down where you can search and select agents. So on the back side, I use the same function, the one that I have in here. And I only have one module file in here now, and it looks like this. And I just export all the module members here. And in all the other modules, like the drop-down called FD agent, I include this module in nested modules, like this. And then I can choose and declare which functions to export. So in here, perhaps I want to, here I only specify the ones that actually comes from this file, search, validate, get categories, and get default. If I didn't specify them, I would get all these internal functions that I have in here as well. I don't want to expose these on to service all the way to Zervicepoint, so they will not be inventoried and added to the activities list in your workflow editor. But I want them to be exposed to all the modules that utilize this module. Okay, if we just look here, so I have a web service and I have 2 drop-downs. This is just a fake drop-down that I created for a different video. And in here I have some activities. But if we start looking on the web service, which I already have open here, I only have one web service, and that's to get all your tickets. And it takes an ID. This is not mandatory, but you can send in an ID to just get one ticket. If you don't send in an ID, you get all the tickets. And this is just a standard param block with parameters and config, so I recommend you copy it from a different module. Or you write it by freehand if you like, of course. So the first thing that happens is that we switch on different. If we provide an ID, we modify the URI to actually point towards a specific ID. Else we would just go to URI to get all the tickets. And this is here we have a little optimization to limit the amount of requests that you need to do. We have added the exclamation mark and the parameter called include and specified requester there. Now we do that just to get the details about the requester included in the response. So we can look on that. And here we have the same code again, just to get the header. And I think this is perfect to have in our share module. So we're going to go ahead and move it there soon. Okay, and then we just do the call. I already have the header. So we look on rests. We have first look on the counts. And we have 7 cases. And if we look on the first one, it's an incident, and you can see that we have an ID for it. We have a subject, and we have the requester, some information there. If I didn't write this in the URI, I would just get a requester ID here. Yeah, so basically that's all the information. Don't we get the description? No. But if we were to specify ID as 8 and we run this instead, we get more information. Yeah, here we have this description. Okay. And then I go ahead and retrieve the conversations, because if we look on how it looks inside FreshDesk, we go to tickets, and I go to my ticket that I fetched with the API. We have all these kinds of entries here. So that's conversation in the API, in the language of the API. So I need to get all those with an additional call here. And I just add conversations to the end of the previous URI. Then I do a little, with the result, I do a little cleaning up. So I change the date format. And the status you saw here, the source, for instance, we can look on. No, the status is just 6. I don't want to just say status 6 in our form. So what I've created is a small function called get FD status as string, and in this case we send in a 6 here. So if we look at get FD status as string, I have a hash table here that maps that. So if I send in 6 here, like this, no. It will return back to me a nice text representation of that number. Same goes for priority. So 1 is low, 2 is medium, and so on. And source as well, because you have source on all your tickets. It can come from email, portal, phone, chat, mobile help, and so on. So we'll go back here. So that's just to make the data more easy to read. And then I do some styling of the conversations that comes back. So if we look on a small demo that I did on this, it's a table page. So it will turn up like this. And you get, if you just look on how I did this table page as well, I created a page called tickets. I added a table to it by dragging this here. I called it FreshDesk tickets and I connected it to our web service. I left the search parameters empty. So what that does is that if I write Erik here, I get a client-driven filter. If I write open, it's filtered as well. But if I provide a search parameter, we can read this in the help as well. We can connect what the person writes in the search box, this box, to a specific parameter like an ID. But ID wouldn't be so helpful because then you would need to know exactly the ID of the ticket you wanted to filter out from the list. So I choose to leave this search parameter window empty. And then I just specified all these to be able to set the size on them. I chose to have this one as identifier because it's the ID of the ticket. And I can show you later, but I added some actions as well. We can remove those for now. Yeah, so now we want to look on the actions actually. We want to be able to click on one of the rows and get a pop-up with more information. And the pop-ups in our table pages are actually services. I'll go into my services and I have an edit FreshDesk ticket here. And if you're unsure how to do this, you can look on the previous video where I went through table pages. And it explains how you connect your table page as an edit action or as an action to a service. And you do that by adding an input hidden and binding that to the system object ID variable. Then you have a JavaScript where you can retrieve information on this object ID. The object ID will become the ID of the ticket because we checked that in this table view. If we checked priority instead, we would get the priority in this text field or this input hidden field. So you get the FD tickets, and that's our web service, and we provide an argument, and this is comes from like I just said, from the table page. And so now we get specific ID, so we get a little bit more information in here. And then we have all the fields we have added to this service. We just populate them from the data that we get from the web service. And so I've added a date time field for the created date. and just text field for requester, priority, and or priority I actually created a static drop down for. So when this web service comes with the priority on a ticket, it will just give you a number. And as we have in our FD management module, we have a little mapping table that I showed you. This, and I just replicated that in here. So this is good and bad. We get very good responsive behavior from the form when we have this kind of static drop down. What it creates is a little bit of problem of manageability, because if you need to add another priority, you would need to go in and update these static drop downs, and if you had multiple, it could be quite tedious. The other option would be to have a dynamic drop down, so you just have a script where you define all of these just once, and then you can use it in the same way. What you lose then is perhaps a little bit of the responsiveness, or that is only when you load the form. Okay, so if I hook up this service now to this service to the table page, we do like this. We click add action, and we can choose action, edit action, or new action. And an action will create, well, we can look on the difference here. Edit FreshDesk ticket. And it shows this as just an action. So go here and refresh. And we have an action button down here. And I need to click one of these to lighten it up. Okay, it just says action, so I'm going to write edit ticket. Save. And if I refresh here, we have edit ticket instead. Okay, so that's nice, but I want to be able to click the rows, and what we need to do then is that instead of adding it as an action, we can add it as an edit action. Edit FreshDesk ticket, and we can have it as default. And if we have it as default, it will be the default when we click the row. We don't have any selector here to choose which actions to use. We just click on one, and it shows the service that we have selected as default edit action. Cool. Now we can see some of the stuff that I did here. We can take a different one. This one perhaps has a little bit more of conversation going on. The way that I achieved this kind of look is by having this is actually a RTF block. Let's see here, text block. You pull that out, and I just call it conversation, and you can put HTML in here, and the HTML I generate in the web service itself. So for each conversation piece, I create a div, and then I put a style on it, and the style I actually put in a function in here called fs comment styling. What I did was basically I F12'd, I selected this, and I just added CSS properties until I got the look that I wanted. And actually I have a div with two divs in it, and the parent div is a flex box. I do that with setting display to flex, and these are flex children, so I can work with alignment there, and that's how I achieve the date on the far right and the comment on the far left. So instead of working with tables and stuff like that, I recommend working with Flexbox, and you can. I just worked with the box shadow here to achieve this little 3D effect, and border radius and border style to get a little border around it, and then added a little margin and padding to make it look airy and nice. And then I put that styling, I generate that basically here and add it to the list. So that's something you can do, it's quite nice. And here we have the drop down for agent. And this is a dynamic drop down. So I can go in here and change the assignee and save the changes. Cool. If we look quickly on that drop down, it looks like this. So we have a search function which will be triggered when you write something in the drop down, and what you write will come in the search parameter. And since I experimented a little with this, it depends on what kind of API you have, but it seems like if I just download all the agents, I will only get told for one API call. So I just get all of the agents, and then I do a little local PowerShell filter to get the ones that I want through search. Because I don't know if the API supports filters on the name actually. And it definitely doesn't support the like keyword, so you can't just, if you want to search on a name, you need to provide the exact name. You can't just write Erik and get Erik Oresten. So what I did was I get all the agents using the function that I have in the shared module. Then I create the output in the way that Zervicepoint wants it, and then I filter that on name and look something like what you've written in search. And the validate function will be called when you use JavaScript to put the value in this dropdown. And we actually do that with the web service now, because we retrieve the tickets and we put the assignee ID in this dropdown, and then we look on well, it will only be one ID, so we try to find that specific ID, and then we return it out here in the supported fashion. And we don't have any get categories, we don't have any get default. We could have a get default if we wanted, but we don't want that in this case. So it will just be empty by default. It has a little remember to have the nested module for this one, because we need that. We use the functions from that module in this dropdown. We just look on the activities really quick. I did one called set FD ticket, and when you do these kinds of API calls, sometimes you need to provide a bunch of parameters, and it will not suffice by adding stuff to a URI. You need to have a body. So the way we achieve this in the case of Fresh API is that we basically need to provide JSON in the body parameter of the invoke REST method. So first we create a hash table, and we get that here, and then we convert that hash table to JSON, and we put it on the body parameter of the invoke REST method commandlet. So what I wanted to do now is to create a function for creating a new ticket. So I already created one to set and update an existing ticket, one to remove a ticket, and which was very basic. You just swap the method, and then I have one to create a reply. I can just quickly demo that. So in the workflow of this service, I have put my set FD ticket activity in there, and also hooked up my new FreshDesk reply command activity as well. So if I just change status to pending, priority to high, add a number here, I can change assignee, write assigning to Bosse instead. You are welcome, Bosse, smiley. Save changes, and now this order is being processed, but I would want the row to just be gray or something, or some kind of indication that this row is being worked on at the moment, but we don't have that right now. So what I can do is just refresh, and I can see that the priority has been changed to high, status is opened, and I added 2 on the subject, and you can see my conversation here, assigned to Bosse instead, and it's assigned to Bosse. So it works very fast, and it does exactly what I wanted, so I'm happy. But I want to create a new ticket. Okay, so let's start by making a new service. New FreshDesk ticket. Create. I don't want shopping cart support. I will have a custom order button text saying, instead of order, I want to say create ticket. And the form, I want the form to be basically the same. And since I have the new Zervicepoint version, I copy all of these, paste them in here. And I don't think I want this one. No comment. Can remove this. Create the date, I don't know. No. Requester. If we look on the API, let's see what they need. So we go to tickets, create a ticket. So as I said before, the documentation is very good, but we need to be careful here. We need to look on the types here. We need to have a requester ID. User ID of the requester. For existing contacts, the requester ID can be passed instead of the requester email. Okay. Facebook ID. Phone call. And here we have the mapping tables that we talked about earlier on status and priority and source. And it seems that we need to create a JSON object and send in the body of our request. And the URL is just to the tickets interface. So that will be quite easy. And here we said any of the 5 attributes is mandatory. So which are those? Twitter ID, unique external ID, phone, Facebook ID, email, requester ID. Okay, so we're just going to go with requester email now, I think. Just write requester email here. And I think many of these are decimal now. Are requester decimal. Reporter string. Reporter, okay, that's fine. Look at our forum. That looks quite okay, actually. and I can choose assignee here. Maybe we don't want that, but I will leave that for now. Okay, I think we're ready to start working on the activity. I will just copy this. And we need to have the correct parameters. So let's say a requester email. And if this was a real case, we could take the email from the logged in user and have a drop down where you could select the requester, but it defaults and is to the currently logged in user, and it's read only. So we have a gray box where your name is in it, and then the first thing we do in the workflow is to get the email from that user. And I don't know if people who use FreshDesk, they perhaps sync all that information over to FreshDesk, so we would be able to get the FreshDesk ID from the form. So that depends here. But I'm just gonna say that we can't guarantee that this user already exists in FreshDesk. And it seems that we should be able to use the email then. So I'm just gonna use that. Subject and description. Subject, description, priority status. We don't actually need to set these, I think. Refer to prototype for support. Okay, for supported values, yeah. The default value is null of type. Perhaps we have a default value on type. I know I have the types in here. Source, okay. Source portal perhaps we can use, but that's source. Default value is 2, okay. Alright, so we'll just try this with the basic amount of, well, we can perhaps try these. So I do a little parameter name magic here. If we have provided the assignee here, we add the responder ID and we parse this as an int64, and we do it as an int64 because it's a very large number. And then can remove this because we were going to send it straight here without the trailing slash, and here we have a function that I just use where we do some stuff where I take all of the parameters that you have sent into the commandlet or the activity and we filter some of them. So these are exclude properties. And then I just go and use to lower because the API will throw a 400 error if you send it with a first uppercase. So I just do some magic to make the parameters look like they expect them in the API. So I think I have a parameters file here. Well, we can do it the real way. So if I want to have a look on debug on how the parameters will actually look in here, I can actually export this at runtime parameters. So I just dump them there, and I will have to update the name on this activity, and I need to add this activity on functions to export like that. And I need to restart my provisioning system to inventory this activity again, because remember, you need to restart the provisioning system to inventory activities, or wait like 30 seconds, or inventory manually through the command prompt, but I just think this is easier. And the provisioning system inventory system is for drop downs and web services. So you need to make sure which service to restart to get your stuff inventoried. If I go back here and in here and I refresh, go to workflow editor, I have my FreshDesk plugin here, and now I have my new FD ticket here as well. So I'm just going to go with something static here, but let's bind these. Assignee. And then we refresh here. Put hi, open my new test. Create the ticket. I can just have a look and see if it's running, and now it's completed. So I should now have my file export. And I can do this and have a look on what I got from the data train in the Zervicepoint workflow. And now I can debug here more. And remember, I put stuff in the config files now. I didn't explain that before, but so the API key I created an entry here in my provider XML. If you're unsure of how to do this, go and check our docs on how to set up your first plugin. But the idea is that you can add configuration values here, and you can use them in your script afterwards. So once the API key changes, you just go in and update them here in one place. Okay. And what was the method where we're going to use? Post. I'm gonna run these to see if we can get a ticket created. Have a look on that body. Okay, so it's very important that you see we have these on the strings, and whenever it's a number, you're supposed to not have anything. And if you look on this table, you see it's a number, or it's a string, so you need to make sure that you parse and convert everything in case you didn't take it in the correct fashion in the activity. And I've done some things here where I specified an int on the status, for instance. And you need to make sure you have a Zervicepoint decimal map to this, because else it once the Zervicepoint workflow comes to the point of running this activity, it will just throw an exception. So now I have a body, and let's just try it. And it's a bad request. And unfortunately, we don't get any more information than that. Okay, so the problem is perhaps that we have requester email, and we can't have that. So it's just supposed to be called email. So I will fix that by looking at our params and remove requester email. If we look on params again, it's gone. If we add email, And now we have converted the body. And that actually did work. So if we go back to our view here, we have our new ticket here. Okay. And we can edit it in the same fashion. So that's very cool. And that was everything that I was thinking about including in this video. And maybe we get a reason to make sequel to this as well, because there's still a lot of things that you will want to do. And if I explore FreshDesk more, I will probably find, I know there's tons of other stuff in here, like feedback functions and different kind of ticket entities that you can work with. And I will definitely put this project on GitHub, so you can just get your own copy and experiment with FreshDesk if you'd like, or if you something that your organization is thinking about implementing and you want to have it integrated in Zervicepoint as well. You could do that. So something that I know that many organizations that have ticket systems incorporated in Zervicepoint want to have is that whenever someone creates a specific service request in Zervicepoint, they want to have a quick ticket created and just closed and archived in their ticket handling system for future reference and for audits and stuff like that. So that's something I've seen implemented in some customer installations of Zervicepoint. Okay, so thank you very much and have a nice week.